church where regular teaching and preaching of the Bible hold a primary role and where Scripture's authority is final.
Who would you say are some of your greatest influences as a preacher?
Well, I think that my old pastor, as I've said, probably taught me more, even subconsciously, when I never believed I would be a preacher. I just learned so much. I think I was so blessed by listening to Dr. Martin Lloyd-Jones several times, week in and week out, when I was in London. Again, a man obviously of the Word, but also a man of the Spirit. And certainly one learned from him the value of working through a book. So, I mean, he took years working through Romans, working through Ephesians. My pastor used not so much to do that. He would often follow a character, and that he made the characters live, which I appreciated. But I felt that Lloyd-Jones, working through, say, Ephesians, you just take phrase upon phrase, and he would back up and then come through again, say some more, back up, go through it again. So you're really getting a grasp of a whole book, and it's all having its impact on you. Yeah. So that was hugely influential.
What about some more contemporary preachers? Any ones that you enjoy listening to nowadays?
I listen on tape.
Apart from myself, obviously.
I listen on tape to Mark Driscoll. I'm fascinated by his mind. I've been listening recently to a series he's done on Luke, and he's just got so much background information, which I find fascinating. It engages me, but he's got a huge passion to bring about response to Jesus. And so I've benefited listening to him. I listened to Tim Keller, again, just an extraordinary preacher, and like not a word is wasted. He preaches not quite so long, but I think that every word is chosen, it seems to me. I like listening to John Piper. I've enjoyed enormously hearing him preach. So yeah, I listen to quite a lot, mostly on my iPod. I don't get much chance to go. I heard Don Carson when I was at New Word Alive last year and the year before, and again, just his the man's breadth I found so stirring. And to be honest, the preaching was so magnificent that you could almost settle for church for great preaching, which I don't want to settle for because there's so much more in church. But I felt I could see, hey, the preaching is so great. I understand where there's very great preaching that you could settle for church being less than it's meant to be.
Sure.
People are fascinated by things they've never heard before, fresh insights, relevance. And preachers are fascinating, aren't they? I always felt that David Pawson was never dramatic. He used to stand pretty still, and his voice tone didn't change a great deal. But he always had fascinating insights. He was always so interesting to listen to. He got fresh thoughts, he got amazing illustrations, so your mind was engaged. I think it's important to engage people's minds. They think, oh, I'm learning things. This is interesting. I think humour helps, not to overplay it, but I think people appreciate humour, they feel engaged with.
I remember you saying C.J. Mahaney once said to you many years ago when he first started listening to you as a preacher, and he said to you, you preach the Bible. I remember you thinking, well, what do you mean by that? What else is there to preach? What do you think he was getting at?
I think he had been a preacher at that time of topical subjects. And when I said what I did to him, he said, oh no, I get it all from the Bible. But he had never heard an expository preacher before, which seems almost impossible now, because CJ would be one of the best expository preachers I know today. He's just magnificent. But in those early days, decades ago, that was a first exposure he had to someone working through a text or working through a story. That wasn't the style. Theirs would be much more drawing illustrations, making a point, moving on, looking for application. He was always a great preacher.